All right, this is our third video on the market, and this one we're calling demand versus quantity demanded and supply versus quantity supplied. This is when we're really going to try to bring home why the economist differentiates between the term supply, which is the function, and quantity supplied, which is an amount you get at a particular price, and demand, which is a function, and quantity demanded, which is an amount you get at a particular price. Why does the economist have to differentiate between these terms, and why in these videos that we've been doing have we been so strongly emphasizing this difference? And we're going to get to it right here, okay? I've got two different situations, okay? In one situation, we were at a market equilibrium, and we got an external or exogenous shock, okay? We got an external variable that changed. In this situation, it was a determinant of demand. One of these things changed. Perhaps consumer taste for the good increased, and you see there was an increase in demand. Demand shifted right. In this situation, we were at an equilibrium, just like in the other one. We got an exogenous variable changing, an external shock. In this one, it might be the cost of inputs going down, and that shifted supply to the right. Once again, that's an increase in supply, shifting supply to the right. So we've got two different types of situations, and we want to talk about this to different economists and make sure that we're accurate and we know exactly what's going on. Here's the point, y'all. If you take a look at this one, what's happening is we're moving from this equilibrium, Q equilibrium sub 0, to Q equilibrium sub 1. Well, if we remember that Q equilibrium is where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So we used to have quantity supplied equaling quantity demanded here. We now have quantity supplied equal quantity demanded there. And that means that in this graph, we're both producing more, okay, and we are buying more. So in this graph, we're both producing more and buying more. The same is true here. In this graph, the quantity equilibrium sub 0 moved to the right, okay, it moved over to the right. We're both supplying more and buying more in this graph. So if all we had was just one way of talking about, supply, as in we never said quantity supplied, we just said supply, okay, we're supplying more in both, and we're demanding more in both. But there's something very different happened in these markets, and we want to be very specific about what happened. In this graph, something fundamentally changed about the consumer, the demander of the good. And we want people to know that something fundamental about demand changed, nothing fundamental about supply changed. In this graph, nothing fundamental about demand. Oops, I see I've got a little mistake. That should be demand sub 0. Nothing fundamental about demand changed, but something fundamental about supply changed, okay? So we need to be able to communicate that. So here we go. How are we going to communicate what happened in this graph? We're going to say there was an increase in demand, okay, because the entire demand function shifted to the right. We're getting more quantity demanded at every single price point. However, the only thing that happened in regards to the supply curve is that we moved along it. We got an increase in the quantity supplied. Let me make this point very clear. Nothing happened to the price-quantity supplied relationship. We're still getting the same quantity supplied at every price point as we always have. It's just that the increase in demand caused us to have a temporary shortage. The shortage pushed prices up, and when the price went up, the quantity supplied increased, okay? So increase in demand, increase in quantity supplied. We're going to get an increase in price, increase in quantity equilibrium. I'll put price equilibrium also. In this graph, all right? Supply shifted to the right. Something fundamental about the quantity supplied price relationship changed. We're now getting more quantity supplied at every single price point. So supply itself, the supply function increased, shifted right. Nothing fundamental about demand changed. We're still getting the exact same amount, the same quantity demanded at every price point as we've always been getting. Okay, so I'm going to put quantity demanded. However, we did move along the curve to the right. There was an increase in quantity demanded. Why did we get an increase in quantity demanded? Because when the supply curve shifted to the right, at the original price point, we got a temporary surplus, putting downward pressure on prices. And when the price began to go down, the quantity demanded increased. So increase in supply, increase in quantity demanded. In this particular situation, the price went down, the price equilibrium went down, increase quantity equilibrium. So hopefully you can see in this situation it's very important we differentiate between the terms supply and quantity supplied and demand and quantity demanded. Just a very quick recap here. In this graph, something fundamental about demand changed. We're getting more quantity demanded at every price point. Nothing fundamental about supply changed. We're still getting the same quantity supplied at every price point. It's just that when demand increased, prices started to go up and we got an increase in quantity supplied. In this graph, something fundamental about supply changed. We're now getting a higher quantity supplied at every price point. That increase in supply is going to create a temporary surplus, causing downward pressure on prices. As the price goes down, we're going to get an increase in the quantity demanded. But once again, nothing fundamental about demand changed in this particular graph. Hopefully that starts to really bring home the point that we need to understand the difference between the name of the function and the amount that's being supplied or demanded at any given price point. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next graph. Not next graph. We'll see you in the next video.